Hello, everyone. I'm joined today by Richard Cho, advisor and the former chief recruiting officer at GEM, who has had a long and successful career as recruiting and talent acquisition leader. Cho, would you please tell our listeners more about yourself and your career?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. So, my career spans the better part of 25 years. So I'm kind of one of the old people in the business, but started off like everyone else in the agency era and then moved into going in-house to help build organizations somewhere around almost, let's call it 18 of my 25 years. In the last 15 or 14 years have been with hypergrowth companies like Facebook, who's now Meta, Dropbox, I went Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, and then eventually I ended up at Robinhood, helped them grow from 400 just over 4,000, and then most recently GEM. So that's kind of like the brief history of my background.
Thank you for sharing. It's really exciting to think about those phases of growth, because as a startup founder myself, I know when you hit those phases of growth, a lot of things can be thrown into chaos and you're building new processes and systems. And would love to hear, how did you really factor in diversity and a sense of culture and belonging during these rapid growth phases?
Yeah, that part of it's really important because it's part of the overall culture and identity of the company. It all starts with the importance of diversity that should be stated by the founders themselves. Like, why is it important to the business? Why is it important to the identity of the culture of the company? And assuming those things have been well verified and documented, then you go on with that as your blueprint to how to build an organization that is more diverse and carries the culture. Hardest thing about that is ensuring that, you've set up your processes to collect the right data, because you're not going to make a difference without the right sets of data to achieve the diverse workforce that's defined in that in that identification statement. And so you track things like gender, race, ethnicity, and other backgrounds to see how well or more importantly how biased maybe some processes might be, so you can try to get ahead of that. So it first starts with that statement and then goes into measuring using data and then tracking your progress along the way.
I couldn't agree more, Cho. I think that that's something that it's like a phase one. It's a foundation that leaders need to set that initiative. And I think data is so important. Are there any specific ways that you've maybe started out doing that? Maybe ways of getting scrappy around data or tools and technologies you've leveraged?
Yeah. So what's interesting is, not that long ago, like literally only like 2-3 years ago, you had to try to, within the legal limits, try to track these things manually. And then it was probably around a couple of years ago, there was a tool that used AI to infer some race and gender, so that you can allow a machine to anonymously, track that statistic. And then unfortunately, that company went away. But then, not to make this a plug for GEM had included that in their overall pipeline analytics tool. So, and that is what allowed companies like Robinhood to be able to look at sort of the directional effectiveness of the bias that might occur in the hiring process. So that's about the best way and more legal way to do that, because there's an arm's length distance. You take away some of that you sort of important data and you anonymize it so people that are making hiring decisions are not using that to influence their decisions.
Absolutely. I think that's really powerful. And I think it's really cool that to lead recruiting at a recruiting tech startup. I think it's so fascinating that you can drive the innovation and the strategy there. I know when we first connected, you were really focused on early careers. And I'd love to get your perspective on, how do you think early careers plays an important part in diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Yeah, it's in many cases, a lot of companies, for right or wrong, use early careers as the testing ground for how well the company can build a diverse workforce. Is the company and the brand and the mission and values attracting the type of diverse talent that company wants to be known for? So it plays an important role. However, I mean, now more than ever, this is going to be really critical because, diversity just doesn't mean that you focus on, people with not underrepresented backgrounds just in your early career programs. It should be across the board. And in today's economy, a lot of the hiring cuts have been with sort of early career, so that access becomes even harder. So we all know the reason why every company struggles with diversity is, a combination of, biased processes as well as limited access to, especially those that are historically underrepresented. So the best ways companies can turn around and think about early talent is, how do we make it easier for early talent to have access to the best opportunities in the world? And every company should think this way, not just the, top Fortune 100 companies, but even startups who may think about, oh, well, in order for me to, hire my one engineer, I need to make sure that I hire someone who I know, that someone knows can vouch for this person. That's where some of this sort of bias, occurs. So, how can you think about really pressure testing your hiring process such that you have better access to those from historically underrepresented backgrounds, and B, have unbiased selection systems, and so that is the role that early career hiring programs play in overall diversity.
Well, Cho, you're speaking our language, because that's ultimately our mission at Symba around opening up the workforce. It really is about access and ensuring that young talent can enter the workforce. They are getting a lot of support, and we're embracing and creating an environment of psychological safety for them as they progress throughout their career. One thing that you said that really resonates with me, and I've been thinking a lot about it, is kind of this holistic approach to diversity, where you just mentioned, it's not just about, the entry point of the career. How do you think that companies should maybe approach that, taking that more holistic approach to that strategy?
Yeah, I think there are a number of different ways. One is, let's all agree that, there's tens of thousands of amazing universities in the U.S. and yet, only 20 of them have really robust campus programs from the top companies in the world. And so we got to ask why that is. How do we expand, the visibility to all the openings, especially during a time where we're still in a historically low labor market. We have a labor shortage that we haven't seen in decades, and yet we still have limited access to students from every university, not just the top 30 in the world. But the second part is, universities really isn't just they don't have the monopoly of the best talent out there. There are a lot of programs that produce really amazing talent, whether, if we stay in tech, whether they're like coding boot camps, where it allows individuals with non-CS degrees sort of reimagine their careers and to become, computer scientists. But even in the, standard G&A roles, there are a lot of programs that help, individuals that may not even gone to university to have access to jobs where they can, excel and thrive. And so the short summary of that is, expand your university program to not just include the same schools that every company is going to, and expand your early talent programs to include boot camps and apprenticeships, some of these 1-year internships that, internships like Year Up that go into, I guess, low income communities, and they help train amazing talent to become these amazing, employees. So those are the things that I would highly recommend companies all do in expanding their early career programs.
Thank you, Joe. Those are great examples. And we're big fans of Year Up, and we also work really closely with Inroads and the work they do to connect students with opportunities, but, provide a lot of resources and support throughout the whole experience. I'd love to really get your perspective, especially because we're both in the Bay Area, and I'm sure this hits close to home because you've worked in the tech space. We're seeing that D&I and university teams, they are being hit hard by these layoffs. So what maybe advice do you have for companies during this time as potentially as they're making the decisions, or if these decisions are made, how can they continue to support those initiatives and activities so they don't disappear altogether?
Yeah, I suspect I could say something super controversial here, so I want to tread lightly. But I've always said that companies that so first off, no company has really figured out a true DE&I program that is lasting, that's authentic, that is part of their DNA. I mean, and many companies have tried, but fall short for a few reasons. One, they haven't really made it a true part of their overall DNA of the organization. It's always been an adjunct, if you will. Companies go from early stage startup to hypergrowth startup to, publicly traded. And you see that in that sort of hypergrowth to publicly traded is when DE&I becomes important, which tells me it's a initiative that they felt that needed to happen later on, and didn't really ingrain it into their overall DNA. And if that occurs, then DE&I just becomes a expendable program, if you will. And to your point, we're seeing that these programs are being cut, drastically, which is a real bummer, because the message it truly says to the employees that are remaining at these organizations is that DE&I may not be as important as it was once, articulated before, and that just having, employee resource groups is just not enough, because you really have to transform your organization. So my message really is reinvest. Like, now is the time to really get it right. You now have the time and space to figure out, do we have biased processes in our selection of new employees? Are we promoting, equally across all dimensions of, diversity? What does our executive team look like? What does our board look like? These should not be feel-good initiatives. These should be part and parcel of the true identity of the organization. And if they really meant it, this is the time to invest in that, not just because you want to get DE&I right. It's because it's going to make your company better or higher performing, and it's really elevating your DNA and your culture to where you want it to be. And so that's something that companies need to do right now.
Absolutely. I would echo that and, strongly agree that this is the time. And I think this is the time when, you see these activities happening, that right now it's really felt, and you can see in the news which companies are reinvesting and which ones are making these decisions. And for us at Symba, our whole mission and vision is around this topic of how to open up the workforce. And we were created as a social impact project with late Congressman John Lewis. And what we mean by open up the workforce is creating access to jobs and wealth creation that is equal for all. So would love to get your perspective on when you think about that notion of open up the workforce. What does that mean to you, and what do you think needs to still happen in order for us to open up the workforce?
Yeah. I'll personalize this story, because I think I was lucky to have been in tech for as long as I have, not because I'm smarter or better than anybody else, but because of where I lived, my vicinity to Silicon Valley. And I equate the last, 20 years in tech to be our modern day version of the gold rush. Anybody that moved to Silicon Valley or Silicon Alley, any of the metro areas that really have successful, startup stories, vicinity and access is what gave you that ticket to the modern day gold rush. And while we see other parts of the United States whether it's the heartland or the Midwest and Mideast states that are suffering because the industries in which they were known for, whether it's manufacturing or coal or other rules, have started to dwindle. And because they didn't live in the vicinity that I lived, they didn't have access to wealth that others had. So I know that there are a lot of programs, both federally supported and amazing startups like yours that are opening the doors, but we really have to think about this notion that there's something off. If the Bureau of Labor Statistics still show a labor shortage, and yet we know in the middle states and other states are just not in the tech areas that we have people that are, partially employed or underemployed, there's something wrong here. There's a lot of smart people that should have had the same access that I had. So how do we cross that divide? Part of it is every company that has the ability to hire people should really reinvest in where they go for talent. And the other part of it is, how do we prepare really smart people to do a transition from manufacturing, coal, whatever the background could be, to these jobs that are readily available. And so it has to be a combination of both federal, state supported programs, along with companies really reinvesting and revamping where they go for talent. And that marriage is what's really going to solve this problem.
That is such an important topic that I think sometimes, being in the Bay Area, we don't talk about enough, and how the labor shortage impacts all these other industries. And I think there's a powerful element of also marketing to young talent students and getting them excited about opportunities in these industries that are going to set them up for success long term. So I really, really appreciate you bringing that up, Cho. And I think it is an important conversation right now at the top of mind for a lot of leaders, both on a public and private sector basis. Would love to wrap it up and see if there's anything else that you'd like to share with our audience, whether trends that you're following, things you're excited for this year, anything that's top of mind.
Yeah, I mean, so certain industries, especially tech, we're hearing doom and gloom. And I almost sound like I'm the person that, continuously says, like, don't worry, it's just right around the corner. Things are going to turn around. And at some point, people are going to, think that I'm just, blowing smoke, and people are going to start becoming discouraged. All I can say is hang in there, be patient, stay encouraged, because I've seen this 3, 4, 5 times. And in every time I've seen this, every company, cuts their recruiting and hiring, processes too deep. And so there's this race for talent and lots of money that is invested in trying to hire back again. And what I'm trying to do is advocate for a smarter way for these, swings to be less drastic. In addition to this is the perfect time to open up new avenues for talent that we all know there's so many smart people that we didn't have access to in other states, that we now have the time and space to, increase that visibility and have access to. And so if we can get those things right, we will see an amazing turnaround in both innovation and product quality, as well as hopefully bettering people's lives across the entire nation. And that is something that I hope to be a part of that overall movement.
Wow, that's such a powerful note to wrap things up on, Cho. I think that what you just shared is what inspired me when we first connected, and talking about the resilience that you've talked about in this industry, that not being so reactive, being strategic, thinking long-term about these initiatives, because you've seen it happen. I think that's such a great note to remind our audience today on this note, and especially what we're seeing in the market, that there's an exciting future ahead. So I want to say thank you so much, Cho, for being on with us and sharing your wisdom and leadership with us. I'm excited for a future where we're opening up the workforce together.
I appreciate you having me. Thanks again.
Wonderful.